Okay, good morning. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm the first speaker and also the moderator of the first session of this morning. I know most of you. My name is Nico Wulffraat. I'm from Utrecht, the Netherlands. And this is how I met Rashmi last year. I didn't have an official picture of your foundation, but then I found you with your bag. This was in Rome last year, and it's thanks to her and her husband that we are all here for this wonderful meeting. The topic of this session is stem cell therapy for refractory JIA. And I think some of you are new to this topic, so let me give you some historical notes. Because how did we get so far? First, it's important to realize that it was seen in coincidental cases that an adult patient had a malignant disease and an autoimmune disease as well, and he received a stem cell transplantation for this autoimmune disease. And the doctors noted that the autoimmune disease also got much better. So this was taken further. And then in diseases like RA, MS, lupus, scleroderma, there were large numbers of patients transplanted with variable degrees of success. I don't have the time to discuss all that. But then also we started to transplant children. That was autologous transplant. Autologous means stem cells from the patient, him or herself, as opposed to allogeneic, which means that the stem cells come from someone else, right? So, and at that time, another thing that you have to realize, we're talking about 98, 99, we didn't have biologics. We have lots and lots of steroids, and cyclophosphamide, and methotrexate. That was just about it. When I grew up in pediatric immunology, that was what we had. I was also working as a transplanter in a stem cell transplant unit where we did allogeneic, and some of the regimens were seemed to be applicable to autoimmune disease, like for severe aplastic anemia. So we started out with low-dose TBI plus ATG, and busulfan later replaced by fludarabine. And we set up, in collaboration with EBMT, protocol for autologous stem cell transplantation for refractory JIA. And there were something like, 3 different protocols with or without TBI. And in the first round of results, we didn't see a lot of difference. So the next phase was to skip TBI of course, for the potential side effects and go along with fludarabine-based protocols. And given the fact that those children have a high-risk population with very, very refractory disease, the results were quite good. This is looking at active joint. I don't think if you can see it clearly. This is a physician's global. You see here the limitation of movement, which is already quite high. And that's not surprising because these patients had long-standing disease with lots of erosions and limitation of movement. And that cannot change, of course, even if you remove the inflammatory component. So, we did in the years following this some more research on the pathogenesis, and we really saw that there was oligoclonality in the situation before transplant, which was completely restored after. So here you see a nice diverse pattern, and there is a patient number 4, who had a relapse, where we saw that this diverse pattern of the T-cell receptor was again lost just before the relapse. So, coming to the conclusions, I hope the sound is ready already. That we saw skewing of T-cell frequencies. We have memory T-cells from pre-transplant that have a proliferation advantage, and they really proliferate and cause a nice polyclonal pattern. So, these are the kind of patients we're talking about. This is a patient who had, there she is, of course, you can see her, who had a very long-standing disease, and I think this is for parents recognizable. You can see the complications that she had over time. Note that the mother was affected with very severe scleroderma, who received stem cell transplantation in 2004 with good results. Nevertheless, they were very afraid to undergo stem cell transplantation, and they have always refused such therapy. What did she get? She got a lot of biologicals as soon as they were available, but she was refractory to all these. What happened is that she had many complications prior to the stem cell transplantation, and when the parents finally decided they would go on, and she was put on a waiting list for a catheter, she died at home in her sleep with unknown cause, because we did not get autopsy. This is what sometimes happens in refractory systemic GIA. Talking about the developments of stem cell transplantation, autologous, that is mainly based on fludarabine as a conditioning. Conditioning means chemotherapy that you have to give to a patient in order to destroy the old immune cells and give back the new immune cells, purified so that they can grow again and grow into a healthy immune system. We have been discussing the issue of autologous versus allogeneic since the beginning, and in the initial years we said let's first do autologous because it's safer. Allogeneic has the disadvantage of potential graft versus host disease. Of course, nowadays we are much better in looking for a suitable donor. So this disadvantage of allogeneic stem cell transplantation is getting smaller and smaller, and I think nowadays many physicians would favor allogeneic. So in the next two talks you will have presentations from London, from the stem cell transplant unit and the rheumatology unit. I'm looking over there if the sound is connected. I have to keep on talking? Okay. We have Lucy Wedderburn, whom the doctors know very well. She's a Pete, what do you want me to do? Keep on talking.
Keep on talking. We'll tell you when to talk.
She is a...
So actually, maybe can I just maybe talk for a minute as to why I requested you to do this panel?
Yes, yes.
Perspective.
Go on.
And I know how hard it was to kind of do this.
So, I think for a lot of refractory patients, once in a while the discussion comes up. Maybe if nothing works, then, maybe you need to do a transplant. But when you try to get into the depth of any discussion with the doctors, they don't quite know if it would work or not, or what the latest is, because there hasn't really been that many publications recently in SJIA about this, and there was the experience 10 years ago. This is not just my experience. I think pretty much everyone sitting here will tell you that this comes up. And every few, maybe months, we have a long thread in the Facebook group, basically talking about, well, my doctor referred a stem cell transplant if nothing else works. What do you others think about it? And so this is, to me, this session is an answer to that question so that we can take the latest for whatever we know back to the patients and tell them, if this comes up, here's this video to watch. So that's why we are doing this, in the hope of bringing the latest information to patients.
Yeah, I agree, but yet it's still complicated in bringing this to the patient, given the fact that we have a relapse of about 40%. So it's difficult to counsel a parent, because we cannot predict whether you will get the relapse or the sustained remission. And we do know it's quite a toxic therapy. The patients who are eligible for the therapy are usually those who have been treated with biologics for many, many years and who have tried really everything that we've got. And over time they have accumulated organ damage, as I showed you in the Dutch girl. So this makes these kind of procedures risky. And there is what we call treatment-related mortality. It's lower than in the initial years, of course, because we know better what to screen for, but yet it's still about 5, 6, 7%, which is quite substantial, I would say. So guys, what's happening? Almost. So maybe there are questions now before we continue.
Is the mortality rate direct to the transplant or issues that were prior to the transplant?
This girl died before the transplant, right? And that really illustrates how difficult it was, because she could also have died a month later, just after the transplant. You don't always know, because the severe infections, maybe there's organ damage to the heart, to the lungs, there's long-standing therapy with corticosteroids. Yeah, we have, of course, cases that an infection sort of evolved shortly after the transplantation, when there was severe aplasia. Then it's clearly treatment-related mortality.
So is there any thoughts as to transplantation prior to the individuals being so far gone that...
Yeah, that's a very good question. We have been discussing this a long time. For that you need to identify those who are going to do poorly. And that's what we call nowadays precision medicine, that we really need large groups of patients, especially those who do poorly, and study them with all we got. Epigenetics, cytomics, proteomics, and make a sort of a blueprint of that patient and compare this patient with hundreds of patients with systemic JIA who do well on whatever you give them. But that's a whole research project ahead of us.
So the guiding rationale for bone marrow transplant is that you're replacing their immune system with either
immune reconstitution.
Their own immune system, but a less imprinsedly angry version, or another immune system. But is that actually accurate for, there's been obviously tons of work in mice showing that even with really massive total body irradiation, there are lots of radio-resistant cells. And so what do we know about tissue, especially some of the tissue-resident macrophages that we think maybe are pathogenic in this type of disease?
You will never eradicate all the residual cells in the tissues, that's for sure.
But do we know whether we change any of them?
Well, yes, we do. There is in the animal model, of course, evidence, and in chimerism studies, there's also some substantial evidence that we do know that we do replace to a large extent these cells. Yeah, but not all. You're right. I don't know what they. Huh?
Yes, Scott, one answer that's related to that has to do with the issue of the phenotype of tissue-resident macrophages, and the idea that some, well, not just the phenotype, two aspects actually. Where do they come from, and what regulates their phenotype? And in certain tissues, as we know, they come from a self-renewing population within the tissue, not from the bone marrow.
Sure.
And that
But
gives...
I mean, so I'm actually actively doing some of these kinds of things right now because of the frameworks we're doing. And they're replaceable still if you completely wipe them out.
That's right.
But you have to use the most aggressive.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is that there is two things that even the tissue macrophage. So one issue is what are the sources and what's actually the turnover rate in tissue of macrophages. That's one issue. The second issue, so whether you wipe out the ones that are there at the time of the transplant. Let's see. If you whether you wipe those out, but secondly, the way in which they are responsive to the environment around them that is changing, because they are so plastic. Even the resident ones are plastic.
Right.
Just a moment.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, sorry.